So in this talk, we're just going to talk about what apostrophes are, where they come from, and how you can use them. This is an apostrophe, this is a comma, and this is a quotation mark, and they all look the same. They have this ball and chain structure that makes them very distinctive. However, some people do prefer to draw apostrophes and commas with a simple dash, which is fine. You do need to be careful because it looks quite similar to this prime symbol here. What is a prime? Well, it's used in mathematics and engineering, and it indicates units of measurement. So in this case, feet and inches. So if you are reading a mathematical text, just be aware the apostrophes you see might be something else. In all of my slides and notes, I've used the Euphemia font, which has this nice distinctive apostrophe, so there won't be any confusion. The word apostrophe comes from this Greek word, which I won't try and pronounce, and it means Elysian. Now, that may not help you, but if I told you it meant the removal of sounds, then you may get a general idea. It was first used in the Western world in France. Any student of French or someone who speaks French can tell you that a lot of words, like le and are often combined to make the hour. The e is dropped and the apostrophe takes its place. This function is the first one to be transplanted into English, and so it's the first one we're going to look at. Missing letters. So contractions are the first and most obvious way. Two words, such as it is, are joined together by an apostrophe to make is. I am becomes I'm. The apostrophe replaces a letter. However, it's also possible to have a single word with some letters removed. These are called abbreviations. So here's our first one. Government becomes government. So 6 whole letters have been removed from the middle just to make it more writable. It's also possible to chop bits off the ends, so internet and telephone here become net and phone. Some of these abbreviations have become so common that the apostrophe has been lost. Phone is now a word in its own right. So here are some just more archaic examples. These days it's difficult to find words with more than one apostrophe, but here we have boatswain, the man in charge of the ship's deck, reduced to boatswain. In a similar vein, forecastle, the front part of a ship, is reduced to forecastle, which I guess you're meant to pronounce forecastle anyway. I'm assuming these particular naval examples were due to the illiteracy of sailors, but I could be wrong. So that's our first use of apostrophes done. The second one is possession. Now, possession is done in 2 different ways. Possessive nouns, such as Bob's, and possessive pronouns. My students all love possessive nouns because for every Bob you have, you could have a half dozen alternative possessive pronouns, and things like my and mine, your and yours are all pretty confusing. So we'll look at the possessive noun on the left. This is very easy. If you want to indicate that this cake belongs to Bob, just apostrophe S. And now this 95-year-old Chilean man is very happy because he owns this cake. There are some problems, of course. This is my brother James. Well, the picture isn't actually my brother, but the name certainly is because it's the name that's important. His name ends with an S, so I have a choice between James's or James'. I was always taught in school to do the one beneath without the second S. I was told the second S was ugly, and I have ever since taught this one as standard. But of course, people do both, and there's no real right or wrong. The same problem arises with plurals. Flowers becomes flowerses or flowers. It's difficult to say, and again, no right or wrong answer. And by this point, you're probably blessing all those irregular plurals like mice, which don't have the S, and so don't have the problem. This is a list just to illustrate that you only need to give a plural to the last one in the list. So if you're not sure how to pluralize James, for example, you can just put it in the middle so it doesn't matter. This list, incidentally, is the list of names I give to my new English students at the school. So that is our presentation. Is that you, woman from the Wikipedia article on surprise? Yes, it is. There are some controversial uses. It's a strong word, I know, but it's more some rules that people aren't too sure about and apparently come from nowhere. Let's just have a look at a couple of examples. The first is acronyms. So this is HSBC, but it's not really a word, is it? HSBC stands for Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Company, which is too long to be a word, unless you're German. So if you have something that belongs to HSBC, you would call it HSBCs. But also, the convention is to become, if you have more than one HSBC, you would also use the apostrophe, because it's not a word, it's an acronym. So let's put that in context. Here is HSBC, and here is their company car. This belongs to HSBC, so it is HSBC's. However, if I have a collection of HSBCs together they make HSBCs, the same. You think that's complicated? Imagine if there was a huge conference between these HSBCs and they ordered a takeaway. This takeaway would belong to HSBCs? It's difficult to say. Luckily, most acronyms are proper nouns, and so they don't have plurals, and this problem never comes up. The second odd use is use for numbers, most especially dates. So if you look at this, 1980 to 1990 is conventionally referred to as the 1980s, although some people call it the 1980s. So does it belong to the 1980s decade, or is it just a plural of 10 years? Again, there's no real way to say, but it is certain that other confusion can be avoided. So thousands of years or thousands of years? My advice is, if you're writing an essay where grammar is really an issue, avoid digits and stick to the words and you can't go wrong. So that's my talk. Thank you for listening. Any feedback, positive or negative, is very, very welcome. I hope you enjoyed it and have fun learning.